Hello, hello. I'm Casey.
And I'm
I'm
Fallon.
just letting you get settled.
Oh.
And this is Render the Darkness. Double recording day.
Yay.
I'm just letting you know that so that you'll know why I'm wearing the same thing in this episode and then the following episode, because we're recording them both at the same time, but they will be edited and posted later.
Yep.
Yeah.
About a week later, so yeah. Like you wear the same shirt every day.
I have more clothes, I swear. I swear. Okay, so for this episode, we are doing part of our 50 state series. And in that 50 state series that I think we've been on for like a year, we're finally in Massachusetts. So we're on the ends.
God, almost there.
Like a year later, we've hit that middle point. But let me go ahead and give you some fun facts. I actually put 2 in this episode because it is Massachusetts, and they probably have one of the most extensive histories out of every state in the United States, so it was impossible to choose only one. So, my first fun fact is that Boston built the first subway system in the United States in 1897.
Like the...
Not like the restaurant, like an actual subway system.
Oh,
like
so they made the first subway.
For the drivey things, the transporters.
Oh, the transporters, okay.
And then my second fact I found interesting, which I should have known, but I didn't pay a lick of attention in history class, is that Alexander Graham Bell first demonstrated the telephone in Boston in 1876. And that brings me to another fun fact. The telephone was invented before the subway system.
I don't believe it. No.
You weren't listening to my ears.
No, I wasn't. Very, very interesting information there.
I could have done a million cases out of Massachusetts. I really could have. Like, Massachusetts history is so extensive. It's crazy. In fact, I pre-started probably 10 cases out of Massachusetts before I landed on one that I actually sat down and finished. Just because my ADHD got the best of me, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. And then it would, like, segue into something else as a fact into what I was reading, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I would rabbit hole down that. And so, Massachusetts, you probably got a lot of cases coming sporadically once we're done with this 50 states series, because I just find you incredibly interesting. And also, you're on my bucket list to visit. So, the more I can learn before I go visit you, the better I will be. As for this particular case, the one that I ended up landing on and finishing one on is about the Taunton State Hospital hauntings.
Ghosties.
Yeah. You guys are going to hear me say Taunton, but pretty sure it's Taunton.
Taunton?
Taunton.
Taunton.
But I'm going to say Taunton.
Okay. Oh, why? Unless you're supposed to say it's Taunton.
I don't have the accent. I wish I had the accent, because I think the accent is incredible.
Yeah,
I wish
accent.
Instead of Boston, I just naturally was like Boston, but I just don't. It's just not.
I don't either. I go Boston, not Boston.
All right, so Taunton State Hospital is located in Taunton, Massachusetts, on Hodges Avenue. It was originally known as the Taunton State Lunatic Hospital, and it was built in 1851, but established in 1854. And it was only the second state asylum in Massachusetts. Now, the hospital is located along the Mill River on a 154-acre farm. So, very, very big grounds. Its original intention for being built was to help relieve overcrowding at the Worcester State Hospital, which was obviously the first asylum built before Taunton. The very first patient was admitted on April 7th, 1854, and within 8 weeks from that, the hospital would receive 250 patients. A lot of demand, very fast. Not only was the design of the facility largely inspired by Dr. Thomas Kirkbride, so was the concept of the treatment for the patients, initially.
Okay.
Let me briefly cover who he was, so you kind of know what that is. Dr. Kirkbride was a physician and psychiatrist, and he was the hospital superintendent for the Institute of the Pennsylvania Hospital. He also was the founder of the Association of Medical Superintendents of American Institutions for the Insane, or AMSAII. I know, I was really proud of me.
Yeah,
for being
that's
able to
a
bust that out.
mouthful.
Okay, so that is what is known today as the American Psychiatric Association. That I struggled with.
Yeah.
The other one I was like,
Yeah,
and those three words I was like, but that's more what we know now. So luckily they
Shortened it just a tiny bit.
So Kirkbride and a man named Benjamin Rush are considered the fathers of the modern American practice of psychiatry. His practices were considered like the gold standard of clinical care and in psychiatry through almost the entire 19th century. So it kind of made sense for Taunton to hold Kirkbride's practices to a high standard and implement them.
Right.
At least it made sense that that was the plan.
Uh-oh.
So what they claimed to be using was the Kirkbride plan, which essentially it was a design system that advocated for the quote-unquote moral treatment. However, again, despite the intent, it's noted that it didn't always go that way, and they didn't always just house the insane.
Yeah.
They would also occasionally use it for a place of confinement for what they considered to be troublesome inmates. And from what I read, that mostly was the Irish.
Oh.
So, yeah, I know.
I ain't gonna say nothing.
I know. I was a little offended too. I was like, hey, that's some of my people. So, also keeping in mind the time period, pharmacology wasn't really a thing yet, which means the forms of treatment were quite different than they are today. It was mostly experimental. And for many people, entry into the facility was unfortunately a one-way ticket. They would often never leave.
Oh, that's sad.
It is very sad. I think that was kind of common, though, for
Yeah.
most of these kinds of facilities. Like, I think the intent in these facilities was there and eventually grew to be what it was supposed to be over time, for the most part. But this initial takeoff in most of them, I think, kind of was a little rough, a little bumpy.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about some of the treatments that some of the patients were subjected to that definitely did not fall into the Kirkbride plan. The hospital was more often than not overcrowded, which led to some pretty deplorable conditions. They were pretty much always understaffed for the amount of patients that they were taking in. And it seemed like regardless of what somebody was admitted there for, whether it be insanity or epilepsy or dementia, it kind of seemed like it didn't really matter the diagnosis. The treatment plan was kind of close to the same for everyone, which is really bad. Really bad. Yeah. So the treatments ranged from ice baths to lobotomies to shock treatment and or electric shock therapy. And there were many reports of patient abuse and maltreatment and extended bouts of solitary confinement, as well as over-medicating.
Oh.
Not to mention the patient-on-patient violence. It's been reported that over 800 patients died there.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah.
Most of them were buried in what they called, I think you say paupers' graves. Paupers. I'm going to say paupers' graves because that's
right.
what Google said. Not always right, but sometimes. Anyway, so if you don't know what that is, they are burial plots that are funded by local authorities for people who are unclaimed or indigent, or their families simply just couldn't afford to bury them. Most of their names have been replaced by numbers.
Oh, that's terrible. They should never do that.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's still there to this day. You can walk it, you can see it, but you're not going to know who most of them are.
That's terrible.
I know. Although there were many, many patients over the years, there were a couple especially notable patients. I'm going to give some brief information about them because that kind of segues into what you're here for today, which is the ghosts. Ghosts.
Gotta talk about the ghosts.
Eventually, I'm getting there. We're making our way. This is a journey we're on together right now, but we're going to get there. Stick with me. All right, so the first patient we're going to talk about is Jane Topin. She was born Honora Kelly on March 31st, 1854, and I'm actually going to do a case on her after this one, so it's going to be my next case. So I'm going to make her bio very quick, and I'm going to tell you very little. And it's not because I don't know a lot or I don't have the information. I'm just fixed. She's literally my next case. This was one of those rabbit hole moments where I seen her in my research for the hospital, and then I thought, oh, that's a case I really want to dive into and I really want to cover, and so she's going to be my next case. So very quickly, just a general rundown of her. She was a serial killer accused of killing 12 people. When she was very young, her father took her and her sister to the Boston Female Asylum, and they never saw him again.
So she dropped him off just
we'll go over a little more of that later. So the point of that information, though, is that she was riddled with psychological struggles that the Taunton Hospital had intended to fix. But no, that's all I'm going to say about that until my next case.
Okay.
So our next notable patient was Anthony Santo. He was born in Italy in 1894, and he immigrated here to America with his parents. According to his parents, he developed scarlet fever at around 6 years old, and since then, they said, quote, his mind had been afflicted, end quote, since that time. Which in that time frame, I think that really was kind of, anytime a sickness like that developed, and there was any kind of a slight characteristic change from that disease, I think it just kind of got pegged into that line because they didn't really understand what it was. They didn't really know how to categorize it.
Yeah, it happened a lot.
Yeah, it happened a lot, and that's how you got a lot of misdiagnosis, and they just didn't understand mental health the way that we do now. The knowledge just wasn't there. But at age 14, Anthony was questioned about the theft of a bicycle, where he would go on to confess the murder of James and Frank Marino, who were 12 and 18 years old and were also Anthony's cousins.
Oh, dang.
He also confessed to the murder of Louise Stalla, who was only 6.
And how old was this kid?
He was 14.
14. Wow.
However, when further investigated, his confession seemed unfeasible. Not one person by the name of Marino had been reported missing, and when investigators went to the address that Anthony had given them to be Frank and James's address, the people living there couldn't confirm anyone living there by that name in the last year. And upon further investigating, it was kind of determined there was no way he was connected to Louise's death either. But what they did determine was that Santo was, quote-unquote, feeble-minded and delusional, end quote, and experiencing hallucinations.
Oh, okay.
So shortly after they deemed that, he was sent to Taunton Lunatic Asylum. As for his death, it's assumed he died there, but no one knows for sure, and his date of death remains unknown to this day.
So nobody knows what happened to him? He
just went into the asylum, and that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yep. But just because it's assumed he died there doesn't mean he ever left there.
Oh.
In fact, a lot of people believe they've had first-hand encounters that prove he is still there. So, outside of some of the prolific patients thought to still be roaming around there, there's also rumors of a much darker history, such as satanic cults. I did say rumors, mind you, so
Right.
I don't think I really can say that for a fact one way or the other after doing my research. Seems kind of Seems kind of plausible, though. I'm gonna say that. My opinion.
Seem kind of culty.
That's my opinion. It seems like it could have been a thing.
Just a dash culty.
Yeah, just a little bit of a cult vibe going on there. But some people believe that the people who were running these cults were the nurses and doctors in charge of the patients.
Oh.
And it was thought that they were using their patients for conducting dark rituals and human sacrifices. And it was often reported that people would hear patients being dragged, kicking and screaming to the basement through the halls. And that was reported by patients. It was reported by outsiders who could hear the screaming and hollering throughout the nights. So yeah. Again, I'm not saying that that did or didn't happen, but back in those days, most of the patients were dropped off, never to be seen or heard from again. So if someone did go missing or pass away, their families would have never known.
Yeah.
They would have just assumed they were still in the asylum being cared for. It would have been tragically easy for the staff to get away with this, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's pretty crappy. Your family just like, hey, see ya, and they just never come back again. I mean,
that's essentially what happened on a pretty regular basis, sadly. But that does bring me to the spiritual side of the asylum. Supposedly, after the cult was exposed, whenever the staff would attempt to go into the basement, some kind of like a powerful force would stop them from being able to reach the bottom step. And that wasn't just secluded to workers. Many visitors have reported not being able to cross the threshold of the bottom step, or seeing the graffiti that's still on the walls there to this day, triggering some kind of like a vision of a ritual that may have been held in there. They've also been reports of feelings of an intense pressure on somebody's chest as they've tried to press forward past that bottom step and being thrown back, so not being allowed entry into it. And there's some people who believe because it was such a strong force, it's been reported on more than one occasion that some people believe it may be the devil himself that's down there in that basement.
I want to go.
Again, whether or not that's true, I don't know. But the main building had been abandoned in 1975, and over time, the hospital experienced collapsing and it experienced a fire breakout. After that, the governor ordered all the building inside the wire fence to be leveled, leaving only the buildings that were outside the fence. So let's talk a little bit more about things in the way of paranormal. People have reported shadows going in and out of the basement and patients' rooms, leaving illegible texts, shapes, and symbols on the wall that would reappear after being washed. Some that came back the same, some that came back different. There were reports of footsteps down empty hallways, knocks coming from empty rooms, and a shadow-like figure that appeared wherever it liked. People reported seeing a shadow man who clung to the walls and the ceilings. People have reported seeing an elderly man who was crouched down outside, kind of like touching the grass, and when they approach him, he just kind of disappears. They've also seen shadowy figures going in and out of the patient's rooms, staring at them, terrifying them, putting some of them into shock. And a black cloud that's often seen just going outside, just floating around outside of the building. Yeah. And these reports didn't just come from patients. Like, they came from staff and visitors, too.
Interesting.
And there have been quite a few ghost hunters and podcasts and paranormal shows that have toured the premises in an effort to catch one of the reported apparitions. Some of those include, but are not limited to, Abandoned America, which is a podcast hosted by Matthew Christopher, Behind the Walls of the World Psychiatric Hospitals, which is a podcast. This series features multiple episodes dedicated to the history of Taunton State Hospital, focusing on its development and patient history. That is episodes 55, 56, and 58. I'll put the links for that in my show notes. Spooky South Coast, which is a podcast, have also gone to tour the hospital, and it's also been featured on U.S. Ghost Adventures. They included the site in their investigation of America's most haunted hospitals, citing legends of paranormal activity in the basements.
Also, I was hoping my favorite group would have went. I was like, all right, I know she's going to list my favorite group.
No, but, you know, the ability for people to do that has been kind of limited because there's still unexplained, strange, and eerie markings on the walls of the basement to this day. But despite that, Taunton State Hospital is still open and operating.
Oh.
Yeah, it's operating as a specialized psychiatric facility with 48 inpatient beds. It's operating as a woman's addiction recovery program, a youth program, and a substance abuse center.
Holy crap, I just assumed it was like abandoned. Like
It is not. Nope.
Wow.
They are still using it to this day.
Wow.
So, you know, the people that have been able to go in and investigate and do all that kind of stuff, you know, it's kind of been limited because it's still up and running. It's still being used.
Huh.
I know, that's interesting, right?
That is very interesting because a lot of the ones that we talk about
are just abandoned.
Yeah, like.
No, this one's still running.
That's pretty cool.
Still up and going, you say. In fact, it's implemented quite a few programs that have been very useful in the area. So that's one of the reasons I was drawn to this specific one, because there was just different things about it than normal history to an asylum.
Yeah.
You know, you don't normally have that cult attachment. You don't normally have that bring in from, you know, like the Kirkbride plan, and, you know, the history of the architecture behind the building is kind of pre-established before the building was made. Like, there were certain things about this particular asylum that, for me, it just was different than a normal case. The fact that it's still up and running. So.
Yeah. It's very interesting because, like I said, I just assumed it wouldn't.
No.
Because I was like, yeah, you know, like, who's all been there? And I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's why it's, I mean, it's very, I mean, I obviously didn't list everybody that's been able to go in and check it out or whatever, but these were the most notable ones that have. But again, like I said, it's been limited because it's still a running facility.
I'll have to write in and be like, why have y'all not gone here? You need to go here. Do it now.
Well, and again, I said not limited to, so just because I didn't name it doesn't mean they haven't. So they may have, and it just wasn't.
I'm going to say if they did it probably would have been on there.
Maybe. Probably. But yeah, that is my case on the Taunton State Hospital hauntings.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That was very informative and very cool and different.
Yeah.
I definitely want to go there because I want to try to get past the last step.
Well, good luck. I wish you the best of luck on that journey. But that whole maybe the devil himself thing got me a little like, I'm not feeling too jumpy. I'm not feeling all that froggy. I'm not that curious about what's on the bottom, past the bottom step.
Well, fortunately, this is our podcast, so you're going to go.
I'm going to do it just as an excuse to go to Massachusetts.
You got to go with me. No.
But that's my case, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you found it as informative and interesting as I did when I was researching it. And if I missed something, feel free to let me know. If there's something you know more about that I didn't get put in here, let me know. If you've been to it and you've had your own experiences, let us know.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Other than that, that's my sode. Until next time.
Bye.
Ghosty sounds. You have to stop it.
Ghosty sounds.
You must go stop it.
Stopping it now.